Welcome to Spookin' Softly, where darkness breathes and shadows whisper. I'm your host, and tonight we venture somewhere you may not return from unchanged. Find a quiet place, turn down the lights, and let the story find you. Tonight's episode, The Knocking. The Knocking. The trail was supposed to be a balm. A week, maybe 10 days, alone in the Appalachian embrace, shedding the city's ceaseless hum and the dull, persistent ache of everything. I was good at this, or at least I thought I was. My pack was meticulously organized, my route planned with topographical precision. My mind set on the quiet rhythm of boot on earth, breath in lungs. For the first few days, it worked. The world narrowed to the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a hawk, the gurgle of unseen streams. Each morning, a mist like a living thing clung to the ridges, only to be burned away by the sun, revealing layers of green so deep they felt ancient, almost sentient. I found a certain meditative joy in the solitude, in the ache of my calves and the weight on my shoulders. A reminder that I was real, present, undeniably there. Then, the sky began to bleed gray. It started subtly, a shift in the light, a drop in temperature that the morning sun couldn't quite chase away. By midday, the air grew heavy, thick with an unspoken promise of rain. I pushed harder, scanning the darkening canopy, calculating my options. I began to make my way off the trail, looking for somewhere to set up my tent and wait out the weather. The wind picked up, rustling through the pines with a sound like dry bones rattling, and the first fat drops of rain splattered against my hood. Within minutes, the drizzle became a downpour. It wasn't just rain. It was a wall of water, accompanied by a sudden, violent assault of wind that bent trees double and tore at the already sodden earth. Thunder cracked overhead, not a distant rumble, but a sharp, shattering blow that felt like it had split the very sky open. My meticulously packed gear was no match for this. Water seeped through every seam, every supposedly waterproof layer. My boots, until now trusty companions, squelched with each step, and the chill began to sink deep into my bones, a cold that promised hypothermia if I didn't find shelter soon. Panic, a cold, sharp thing, began to claw at the edges of my practiced calm. I stumbled, my feet losing purchase on the slick, muddy trail, catching myself just before a full-blown fall. The visibility dropped to mere feet, the world dissolving into a gray-green blur of driving rain and thrashing foliage. It was pure luck that I saw it. A darker shadow against the shifting gray, a solid shape where there should have been only trees. A cabin. It was larger than I would expect so far from civilization, a sturdy, 2-story structure built of rough-hewn logs, tucked into a small clearing that seemed miraculously shielded from the worst of the wind. A stone chimney rose proudly from its peak, and through the rain-streaked gloom, I thought I saw a wisp of smoke, quickly dismissed as wishful thinking. Hope, fierce and desperate, surged through me, giving my leaden legs a burst of adrenaline. I practically ran the last 50 yards, slipping and sliding, mud flying. I reached the porch, a small, covered area that offered immediate, blissful reprieve from the relentless assault. My pack, heavy with water, slid off my shoulders and landed with a sodden thud. I was shivering violently, my teeth chattering uncontrollably. I peered through the grimy window, expecting to see a welcoming face, perhaps a fire, but the interior was dark, silent. Still, the sight of a sturdy wooden door was enough. I raised a trembling fist and knocked. Not a polite rap, but a desperate, insistent pounding, loud enough to cut through the storm's roar. No answer. I waited, straining my ears over the wind's howl and the rain's drumming. Nothing. I tried again, louder this time, my voice raw as I called out. "Hello? Is anyone home?" Only the wind answered, mocking me with its relentless fury. Defeat threatened to swallow me whole. My rational mind, usually so dominant, was fading under the onslaught of cold and fear. I was desperate. I tried the handle. To my astonishment, it turned, unlocked. A fresh wave of internal debate washed over me. Entering an unoccupied, unlocked cabin in the wilderness felt like an invasion, a breach of an unspoken code. But the biting cold, the relentless rain, the creeping numbness in my fingers and toes, they screamed louder. Survival. That was the only code that mattered right now. I pushed the door open, a blast of icy wind chasing me inside, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and pine. The interior was dim, but even in the low light, it was clear this was no abandoned shack. It was appointed. A large stone fireplace dominated one wall, a neatly stacked pile of split logs beside it. A heavy, braided rug covered the floor in front of the hearth. There was a sturdy wooden table and chairs, a small, well-stocked bookshelf, even a small, iron-framed cot tucked into a corner, complete with a thick quilt. Everything was clean, dusted, and incredibly, smelled faintly of wood smoke, as if someone had just left. My earlier thought about smoke from the chimney wasn't so wishful after all. Someone had been here, very recently. The immediate relief was so profound it almost buckled my knees. I closed the door against the storm, the latch clicking shut with a sound that felt like salvation. My body, pushed to its absolute limit, responded with an involuntary shudder of exhaustion. I stumbled towards the fireplace, shedding my sodden pack, and collapsed onto the thick rug, shivering, teeth clattering so hard I worried they might break. The warmth emanating from the cold stone was a promise, a whisper of comfort that almost brought tears to my eyes. I lay there, curled into a tight ball, listening to the rain hammer against the roof and the wind moan around the eaves. The storm raged outside, a wild, untamed beast, but inside, I was safe. For now. Sleep, heavy and dreamless, claimed me almost instantly, a deep, restorative darkness that pulled me down into its comforting depths. I woke to an unsettling quiet. The frantic drumming of rain, the howling wind, all gone. The only sound was the drip of water from the eaves, a slow, rhythmic plink, 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 somewhere just outside the window. A faint, silvery light filtered through the panes, indicating it was past midnight, perhaps closer to dawn. My body was still stiff, but the brutal cold had receded, replaced by a lingering chill. I stretched, wincing at the protest of unused muscles, and slowly pushed myself upright. The cabin was still dark, but my eyes had adjusted. I could make out the details now, the faded tapestry on the wall, depicting a hunting scene, the worn, leather-bound books on the shelf, their titles unreadable in the gloom. The faint gleam of copper pots hanging in a small, organized kitchen area. It felt cozy. Too cozy, perhaps, for a place that was apparently empty. There was a faint, almost imperceptible scent in the air, something earthy and sweet, like dried herbs and old wood. As I took in my surroundings, a sound reached me. A soft, almost imperceptible sound at first, easy to dismiss as the settling of the old cabin, or perhaps a branch tapping against the roof. Thump, thump. It came from somewhere deep within the structure. I held my breath, straining my ears, my heart giving a tiny, apprehensive flutter. The sound repeated, clearer now. Thump, thump. It wasn't settling. It wasn't a branch. It was rhythmic, and it was coming from the wall behind the fireplace. My exhaustion-addled brain tried to rationalize it. A rodent, perhaps? A large one, making a nest in the insulation? The cabin was remote, but the rhythm, it was too deliberate, too regular, like a fist hitting wood, softly, but with intent. I stood, moving slowly, carefully, my muscles protesting. I made my way to the fireplace, pressing my ear against the cool stone. The sound was distinct here, vibrating through the solid masonry. Thump, thump, thump. It paused for a beat, then resumed. Faster now, more insistent. A pulse in the walls. A prickle of unease started to spread across my skin. My rational mind, newly refreshed, was fighting against a primal sense of dread. There was no one here. I checked. The door was unlocked, but there was no car, no sign of recent habitation beyond the cabin's impeccable state. This cabin was empty. So what was making that sound?
You hear that too, right?
I gasped, spinning around, my heart leaping into my throat. Standing in the doorway of what I assumed was a bedroom, a few feet from me, was a man. He was tall, lean, with a 5 o'clock shadow and wary eyes. He looked as surprised to see me as I was to see him, though his expression was less shock, more a kind of grim resignation. He was soaking wet, his clothes clinging to him, and he clutched a battered backpack in one hand. For a long moment, we just stared at each other, the rhythmic thump, thump, thump from the wall, providing a bizarre soundtrack to our unexpected meeting. Relief warred with a fresh wave of anxiety. Who was he? Was he the owner? Had I truly trespassed?
Well, this is awkward. Looks like we both had the same idea.
He offered a tired, apologetic smile that didn't quite reach his eyes.
Sawyer, and you are?
My voice felt rusty, dry. Elara, I'm so sorry. The storm was so bad, and the door was open, and I just...
Don't apologize. I get it. Anyone would have done the same. I just got here myself. Figured I'd check the back door first. It's usually less obvious.
He gestured vaguely over his shoulder.
Looks like the storm really tore through.
My eyes flickered back to the wall.
What's that sound, though? I just got in and heard it. Thought it was a tree branch at first, but...
He moved towards the fireplace, mirroring my earlier action, pressing his ear to the stone. The knocking was still there, unwavering. Thump, thump. my racing heart began to slow. The presence of another human being, a powerful antidote to the creeping dread.
That's weird. Too consistent for an animal. Sounds like it's coming from inside the wall.
He tapped his fingers against the wood paneling adjacent to the stone chimney.
Empty space in there, maybe? An old flue that's blocked off?
I thought it was a rodent at first, I admitted. But it feels deliberate.
Yeah, like someone's trying to get our attention.
He let out a short, uncomfortable laugh.
Or trying to get out.
The laugh did nothing to dispel the growing unease. If anything, it solidified it. We spent the next hour trying to find the source. Sawyer was methodical, tapping every wall, every floorboard, every ceiling panel. We found an attic access hatch in the ceiling of the main room and a small bolted cellar door near the kitchen. Both were firmly shut. The knocking, however, remained steadfast, moving slightly, seemingly, between the back wall of the living room and the kitchen wall. It was always in the same general area, a hollow space between the outer log wall and the inner paneling.
Maybe it's the owner,
He suggested, scratching his beard.
playing a joke. Or they got trapped somewhere during the storm.
But they would have heard us, I countered. We've been talking, walking around, and it's been going on for a while. Why wouldn't they call out?
Good point.
He looked around the cabin, his gaze lingering on the flickering oil lamp we'd found and lit.
This place is too clean to be a joke cabin. And why leave the door unlocked? No car around either.
The knocking picked up intensity, becoming louder, sharper. It vibrated through the floorboards.
Okay, that's getting a little too close for comfort. Sounds like it's right there.
He pointed to the kitchen wall, where a small pantry closet was built in.
There's a space behind that pantry. Could be a crawl space.
We approached the pantry. It was a sturdy, built-in unit with several shelves stocked with canned goods and preserves. The knocking now seemed to emanate directly from behind it, a powerful, resonant sound that felt like it was trying to splinter the wood.
This isn't right.
He ran his hand along the wall, searching for a seam, a hidden door. Nothing. The wall was solid wood paneling.
It's like it's in the wall. Like it's been sealed in.
A chill, colder than the mountain air, settled deep in my bones. Sealed in. The phrase echoed in my mind, conjuring images of something alive, trapped, desperately trying to get out, or in. The knocking stopped abruptly. The sudden silence was more terrifying than the noise. We stood frozen, listening, our breaths held. The only sound was the distant drip from the eaves and the frantic beat of my own heart.
Did you hear that?
His voice was barely audible. Hear what? I whispered back, my throat tight.
A scrape. Like something dragging in the wall right before it stopped.
My eyes darted around the cabin. Every shadow seemed to deepen. Every mundane object transformed into something menacing. The stacked logs by the fireplace looked like huddled figures. The tapestry, once rustic, now seemed to depict a scene of silent, predatory waiting. Then, from the ceiling directly above us, a new sound began. A soft, scrabbling noise, like nails on wood. It moved, quickly, across the ceiling, heading towards the attic hatch. The attic! I gasped.
Something's up there. Something just moved up there.
He was already reaching for the cellar door, fumbling with the heavy bolt.
If it's not in the walls, maybe it's in the crawl space under the floor.
Wait, Sawyer! Don't go down there, I pleaded, but he was already pulling the heavy wooden door open, revealing a short flight of rough-hewn stairs descending into a pitch-black abyss. A wave of musty, damp air, tinged with something sickly sweet, wafted up.
I just want to check. See if there's a way out or a power breaker or something. This place is giving me the creeps.
He cast a look over his shoulder, his eyes wide and uncertain.
I'll be quick. Stay here, by the door. Don't let anything in or out.
He vanished down the stairs, his form quickly swallowed by the darkness. I stood rooted to the spot, my eyes glued to the open cellar door, my ears straining to catch any sound from below. The scrabbling above had stopped. The silence pressed in on me, heavy and suffocating. A long minute stretched into 2, then 3. The darkness in the cellar seemed to pulse. I called out, my voice thin and reedy. "Sawyer, are you okay?" Only silence. I hesitated, battling the urge to flee. I couldn't leave him. He had just arrived, just as desperate as I was. But the thought of going down into that suffocating darkness, it was an absolute brick wall of fear. Then I heard it, a soft thump from below, then another and another, coming from the cellar. But it wasn't Sawyer's footsteps. It was the same rhythmic, deliberate knocking. Only now it was muffled by the floorboards, by the earth. It was coming from within the cellar walls. "Sawyer!" I screamed, my voice cracking. "Sawyer, what's happening?" No answer. Only the thump, thump, thump from the depths, now joined by a faint, wet, scraping sound, like something being dragged across damp stone. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck, though the cabin was sealed. My skin crawled. The air grew heavy, stale, carrying that same sickly sweet odor that had wafted from the cellar. I turned slowly, my eyes scanning the room, my mind screaming at me that I was alone, truly alone, and whatever was doing this was no longer confined to the walls. The shadows in the corners seemed to deepen, to coalesce. The small familiar objects of the cabin, the bookshelf, the table, the old armchair, seemed to shift, to subtly distort in the gloom. It was as if the cabin itself was transforming, its cozy facade melting away to reveal something ancient, predatory, and very wrong. Suddenly, a faint, high-pitched scratching began directly above my head on the attic hatch. It wasn't a rodent. It was too precise, too deliberate, like fingernails. Long, sharp fingernails dragging across wood, slowly, deliberately, tracing a pattern. Scratch, scratch, scratch. My breath hitched. My eyes were fixed on the hatch, half expecting it to burst open, for something monstrous to drop down. But it remained closed, the scratching continuing, a terrible calligraphy against the wood. Then, from the back of the cabin, the kitchen, I heard a different sound. A soft chittering, like thousands of insects crawling, but that wasn't exactly it. It came in waves, one after another, a sickening rhythm. I was trapped. Below me, the cellar, with Sawyer and the knocking. Above me, the attic, with the scratching. And now, behind me, the kitchen, with whatever horrors were waiting there. The cabin, once my sanctuary, had become a cage, and the walls were alive. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. My throat was constricted, my body locked in a paralysis of pure, unadulterated terror. The air in the cabin was thick now, cloying, heavy with that sweet, decaying smell. It was like breathing in fear itself. A floorboard creaked behind me, not from the cellar, but from the main living space, just barely audible above my own ragged breathing. I didn't dare turn. My eyes were still fixed on the attic hatch, but every nerve ending in my body was screaming that something was right behind me. The silence after the creak was even worse. It was expectant, waiting. Then, a faint, almost inaudible, brushed against my ear. It wasn't a word, not really, but a sound, a breathy, sibilant sigh that carried a profound sense of malevolence, of ancient hunger. It was so close, so intimate, that I felt the phantom brush of something cold and insubstantial against my hair. I screamed then, a raw, guttural sound that tore from my throat, shattering the suffocating silence. I bolted. My legs, previously frozen, suddenly responded, propelled by a surge of pure adrenaline. I ran for the front door, the only exit I knew. My hand fumbled for the doorknob, turning it frantically. It clicked, but the door didn't budge. I pulled hard, grunting with effort, but it was stuck fast. It felt like it had been glued shut or bolted from the outside. Panic flared, a white-hot wave washing over me. From the walls, the knocking began again, but this time it was different. It wasn't just a simple thump, thump, thump.
It was faster, wilder, sounding like multiple points of impact, a frantic, rhythmic assault that reverberated through the entire cabin. It was coming from everywhere at once. The floor, the ceiling, all four walls. The cabin was screaming with it. Bang, bang, bang! Then a sickening crack from the pantry closet. Wood splintering. The shelves, still loaded with cans, groaned and twisted. The wall had begun to crack, but had not given way yet. Before I could count my blessings, the scrabbling in the attic intensified, followed by a loud, tearing sound, like old cloth ripping. Above me, the attic hatch began to bulge. Slowly, agonizingly, the wooden panel curved inwards, groaning under an unseen pressure from above. I could see the wood fibers stretching, protesting. Something was pushing it down. I yanked at the front door again, screaming, "Let me out! Let me out!" But it was useless. It was sealed shut. The knocking escalated into a deafening crescendo, a percussive assault that hammered at my eardrums and vibrated through the very bones in my body. The air grew impossibly heavy, crushing. I could feel the pressure, a palpable presence, closing in from all sides. The sweet, decaying scent was overpowering now, filling my lungs, making me gag. Then, the attic hatch splintered with a sudden, violent crack. A jagged hole appeared in the center of the warped wood. Through the hole, in the dim light, I saw it. Not an animal, not a person. A single, gaunt, elongated finger, tipped with a long, yellowed nail, slowly, deliberately, hooked into the splintered wood,
pulling the opening wider. It wasn't human. It was too long, too pale, too thin. It twitched, then another, and another, until a skeletal hand, impossibly spindly, emerged from the attic. It began to pull, tearing away shards of wood with disturbing ease, revealing a glimpse of something dark and cavernous beyond. I didn't wait to see the rest. My eyes darted around the room, desperate. The window. It was my only chance. It was small, but perhaps I could squeeze through. I lunged towards it, my vision blurred by terror. As I reached it, my hand smacked against the glass, and I cried out in pain as the cold, smooth surface resisted me. It was not a normal window. It was firmly latched, and the wood around it seemed fused, impossible to pry open. The knocking now felt like it was coming from inside my head. The cabin was alive, and it wanted me. I could feel the walls breathing, the floorboards sighing beneath my feet. The air was a suffocating blanket. And then, from the cellar door, a new sound, chillingly familiar. A groan, then a choked moan. It was Sawyer.
Lara, run! It's not him!
The words were thick, distorted, barely recognizable, ending in a horrible, shuddering gasp. The sound of something heavy dragging itself out of the cellar followed. A slow, scraping, squelching sound. I risked a glance. From the black maw of the cellar, something was emerging. It was huge, indistinct in the gloom, but it moved with a jerky, unnatural motion. It wasn't Sawyer, not anymore. It was a grotesque parody, a hulking mass, shambling, its limbs too long, its head too small, covered in a slick, dark sheen. As it lumbered into the faint light, I saw the eyes, empty, staring. It was still him, somehow, but twisted, animated by something else, something unspeakable. The knocking became a frenzy, a deafening drumbeat that filled every corner of the cabin, every inch of my body. It was an overwhelming assault, a primal scream of rage and hunger. I could feel the walls closing in, pressing in on me, suffocating me. The cabin wasn't just a cage. It was a living, breathing entity, and it was consuming me. In a last, desperate act, my eyes landed on the fireplace, the chimney. It was too small, too sooty, but it was a hole, a possible escape. With a final, raw scream of terror, I scrambled towards it, fueled by a terrifying, primal instinct to survive. I clambered onto the hearth, pushing myself up, tearing at the rough stones, ignoring the pain as they scraped against my skin. The air above was thick with soot and something else, something stagnant and ancient. The scraping sound from the attic was directly overhead, and the twisted form from the cellar was advancing, slowly, relentlessly, filling the room with its horrifying presence. The knocking was an unbearable roar, the cabin itself vibrating with its monstrous energy. I didn't think. I just pushed, clawed, squeezed, forcing my way into the narrow, dark opening, soot filling my eyes and mouth. The walls of the chimney were rough, unyielding, but I kept pushing, driven by the absolute certainty that if I stayed, I would be lost forever. Just another part of the cabin's horrifying, endless game. I don't know how long I clawed my way through the darkness, through the suffocating grime and the burning in my lungs. Minutes felt like hours, an eternity of claustrophobic terror. Each scrape of my body against the stone was a torment, each inhale a gulp of soot and dust. But I kept going, driven by the memory of Sawyer's twisted form, of that impossible hand in the attic, of the relentless, intelligent knocking. Then a glimmer. A tiny circle of gray light far above. Hope, like a fragile, beautiful bird, fluttered in my chest. I pushed harder, ignoring the agony in my arms and legs, the way my knees buckled with each upward thrust. The light grew, slowly, until I could finally see the rim of the chimney, outlined against a pale, bruised dawn sky. With a final, desperate burst of strength, I pulled myself out, tumbling onto the mossy roof, gasping for air, choking on soot and terror. The world spun. My body was screaming in protest, but I was out. I was free. I lay there for a long moment, chest heaving, listening to the blessed silence. The storm was gone. The air was crisp, clean, biting. Below me, the cabin stood, serene and innocent in the faint morning light. It looked like a postcard, a perfect, cozy refuge. No sign of the splintered attic hatch, no dark seeping from the pantry, no monstrous form emerging from the cellar, no sound of knocking. It looked utterly, terribly normal. I slid from the roof, landing hard on the damp earth, my body screaming in protest. I didn't look back. I just ran, stumbling through the trees, away from the cabin, away from the deceptive peace, away from the knocking that I knew, with a horrifying certainty, was still echoing in those silent wooden walls, waiting for its next visitor. I never looked back. I never went back. But sometimes, when the house is quiet, when the world outside has settled into a deep, unnerving calm, I hear it. A soft, rhythmic thump, 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 coming from somewhere in the walls. And I know it's just settling, right? It has to be. But some part of me, a part that lives in perpetual, gnawing fear, knows better. It knows the knocking never really stops. It just waits. And so ends tonight's tale, the knocking. Thank you for sitting with us in the dark. If the shadows spoke to you tonight, subscribe to Spookin' Softly and stay close. There are more stories waiting, more voices in the walls, more things that go quiet just before you notice them. Until next time, sleep well, if you can.